Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hi, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today we're discussing Deep Space Nine, Season 5, Episode 2, The Ship. Sisko and chums try to secure a crashed Jem'Hadar ship against the Dominion's wishes. I would say that Season 5 has hit the ground running.
Yes, it has. This is another really good episode. I'm glad not to be disappointed right away.
Well, yeah, that would be terrible. I actually think there's a lot about this episode that was kind of clumsily put together, but it's just good because of the high quality of the show now, that they can kind of get away with that sort of thing.
There's something about this episode that I'm going to get into that is minor, and I wouldn't usually pick this up, but it's what sets into motion the subplot, if it is a subplot, of Enrique dying. So he's shot by a laser, and then he starts bleeding. Wouldn't the laser cauterize the wound? Why is he bleeding?
Well, how do you know what phaser laser injuries are like?
Because science. I don't know.
Okay, well, he actually says they must have some sort of anticoagulant weapon. So obviously you were distracted.
No, I heard that from Sisko, but still. He said that because they couldn't stop the bleeding. He didn't say that because it is bleeding. Anyway, it's a minor thing.
If it was just a laser and a burn, then that amount of bleeding would be bizarre. But I don't think you can just say the laser weapons cause burns, because the high-powered ones disintegrate people into atoms, and that doesn't follow from regular lasers. Okay,
fair enough. Speaking of disintegrating, so something is established in this episode about changelings, and that's if they don't have bucket time, then they die. I didn't realize it was dire. Whenever Odo hasn't been able to change in the past, he always seemed uncomfortable, but I didn't know he would die.
Well, was that why it died? I thought it was just unwell or sick or something.
Oh, so it's not clear then.
Well, I don't think it was just that it needed potty time, because
Okay.
it wouldn't just hold on until it died.
Hey, maybe. No, it wouldn't do that.
That happened to Tycho Brahe, the astronomer.
He didn't change, so he died?
He didn't wee,
Oh.
but it's the same principle. Aside from this episode being a little rough around the edges, I just want to say straight up that the first couple bits, the first couple acts were tremendous. Them walking around on the upside down ship and finding all the bodies hanging from the ceiling. Just visually and in terms of creativity, it was scary.
It was. Dark, crash ship, and then it's an obvious decision. It's an obvious decision to make, but the camera was always tilted when they were inside the ship because it's upside down and things aren't as you'd want them to be. But I like that choice, and the lighting was dark and scary.
There's a lot of underlighting because the lights were on the ceiling, on the floor. The tilting camera was almost distracting, but they did it okay.
It was good they had the bits where Sisko was outside negotiating, so then you get a standard camera. Because if it were tilted the whole time, it would have gone into distracting and annoying.
Yeah, the outside bits were a little rubbish, though.
Yeah, outside of breaking up those camera shots, they were bad.
You've got all this siege tension, and then suddenly he goes outside for a picnic. And then the Jem'Hadar start attacking, so they just run back to the ship. Run, quick! They're going to shoot us! And then it tries to go back to the siege tension, and it kind of gets away with it, to be honest.
It does, oddly enough.
It holds the tension, but only just. I think if we weren't so invested in these characters, and if the way it was basically put together wasn't of such a high standard, then this could have fallen to bits quite severely. I noticed something during this episode that I never really realized before.
And that is?
The Jem'Hadar never transport or sort of beam in whilst they're invisible, because that would be really confusing for the viewer. So they always beam in and then turn invisible.
You're right, though. It would be confusing without some kind of visual cue, or someone would have to have a clumsy line. Look, they transported in while invisible.
Yeah, so it's such a sort of subtle little thing. You never really think about it too much, but there's no point in beaming in whilst visible, but they always do it.
Maybe they always forget. They're engineered that way. They made the mistake when they were writing the genetic code, and then they flipped those two instructions. They meant to put go invis, then beam, but then they screwed it up.
Don't think that's how genetics works. You could have just said maybe they can't beam whilst invisible.
No, I like the genetics way. Something stood out to me as odd in this episode. So Dax, in a moment of frustration, mocks Worf after he rips out a console and says something like, "Oh, what are we going to use this for? A doorstop?"
So you ripped it out of the wall. Very nice. So what do we do with it now? Use it for a doorstop?
Do doorstops even exist? All doors I've seen are automatic.
I'm thinking
Maybe Dax has extensive human history knowledge and pulled that out of her studies.
Oh, well, she's, I believe, 300 years old. She briefly mentioned at one point. So
Are you
maybe,
sure?
Something like that. I think she mentioned multiple lifetimes. Anyway, maybe a few hundred years ago, automatic doors were not ubiquitous. So she's accidentally stepped back in time there, and no one understands her reference. Did Dax actually do anything useful in this episode?
She pointed out to Cisco that looking for something when you don't know what that something is totally pointless. But then she continued to do it after he yelled at her.
She did succeed. She found the cargo.
Not while actively looking.
Well, true. Her point is valid. If you don't know what it is they want, and there's nothing obvious, then you're kind of stuck. Although they could have thought of a changeling.
I felt stupid for not thinking of a changeling after it was revealed. What else would they use so much effort to protect and retrieve?
Well, it could have been, I don't know, the recipe for Ketracel White. Or
They didn't write it down anywhere else.
it's their only copy. Or, encryption codes or something. Anything digital would be easy because that could be anywhere on the ship, hidden in a secret panel or in a file or something.
That's what I was expecting. But a changeling makes way more sense. And it neatly solves the problem of how would they get out of this situation when they're surrounded by Jem'Hadar. Now all the Jem'Hadar are dead because they committed suicide and they could leave. I was curious how they would get out of that situation, because even if they did some kind of deal, negotiated some kind of deal, there's no way they wouldn't just kill them as soon as they got what they wanted.
Yeah, she acts all angry at Cisco because he doesn't trust her. And he says, well, the first thing you said was a lie, but I think he was being kind because the first thing they did was shoot their runabout out of the sky and kill half the crew. And then beam down and kill 3 more people. Or 2
That's
more.
all in the past.
And then she said, hi, here's some big fat lies. And then she's annoyed at Cisco for not trusting her. So, did you recognize Meunier's from previous episodes?
Nope.
He was in them. This is something that I feel falls a little flat. He feels like a one and done character.
He does.
So it feels a bit kind of drab when he's dying. You think, well, he'll probably die or whatnot. Who cares? He's the red shirt.
They do a lot in this episode to show rapport between O'Brien and Munez, but I would have liked to see that in previous episodes leading up to this one.
And you have, but it's just that he didn't have enough presence and there wasn't enough of a bond between him and O'Brien in previous episodes. He was in the one where the Defiant's in the gas giant fighting the 2 Jem'Hadar warships.
Okay.
It was him that suggested using the probes as like echolocation beacons. And he was in the episode where O'Brien has the virtual prison sentence and is messed up. Munez took over O'Brien's duties when O'Brien was relieved.
That's really strange to hear, because the way they treat his character in this episode, it's as if he's being introduced here and they need to quickly establish, okay, look, see, they have a bond. Okay, now he's dying.
Well, yeah, because they probably thought, yeah, let's bring back Munez, kill him off. That'll tug at the heartstrings, a character that people have recognized.
We're so invested.
Once they've been in a few episodes, they've got a little bit of plot armor, so you don't expect it. But then they probably realized, hang on, no one's going to remember this guy. We really need to emphasize how chummy O'Brien and him are.
It's good they did that, though, because if they relied on his previous appearances, I would have thought, why do I even care about this guy dying right now?
Yeah, they really had to hammer home how it would hurt O'Brien if he died. And again, I think they got away with it, but they almost didn't.
It succeeds, but I totally knew he was going to die, because if that job kills O'Brien, then there's no way anyone else will survive.
Is this why O'Brien is the only one on engineering most of the time? It's just such a deadly job. He's the only one that can survive it.
They all keep dying.
He's the only one that can survive death.
The turnover rate is really low, but that's only because they die before they can quit.
It's kind of believable. Except it's usually the red shirt guys that die traditionally.
That we see. The yellow shirts are dying left and right. during non-episode times.
This episode had a severe case of the red shirts. About, 5 guys who, apart from Munez, who you might previously remember, 5 guys who are just introduced and then killed off.
Oh yeah, fish face.
Hoye, the Benzonite. Benzonite? There was one in a next gen episode.
Oh, okay. I thought you looked that up in case I said something dismissive about the fish face.
Would I do a thing like that? Plus, seriously, fish face, that's racist. Unless they are actually an aquatic species, I don't know.
They could have evolved from fish. You don't know.
No, they have special breathing requirements. Except not in this episode.
We don't have time for that.
Well, they didn't need their breathing apparatus because they were dead by the end of the first act. Another thing that I thought was a bit clumsy in this episode is it was supposed to be a long-winded siege, but it didn't really feel like a lot of time passed.
No, and then someone says the barrage has been going on for 10 hours, and I didn't believe that. Why would they waste all those explosives? And then it didn't really feel like 10 hours.
It didn't really make much sense. It would have become pretty clear that they're not going to shoot the ship.
No one is that bad of a shot.
Well, that's what Worf says, that their weapons cannot be this inaccurate.
I could see doing that for a little bit, but 10 hours? Come on, that's just annoying at that point.
Well, the Vorta wasn't exactly very good at diplomacy. She murdered half of them and then said, hey, don't worry, we're friendly. So maybe her military tactics are equally poor.
I could see that.
So if they had to wait 2.5 days, I mean, okay, Munez needed it to be out there quick, but after he died, they would just be fine to sit there.
Pretty much.
Dominion guys are not actually shooting them, they're just basically having really annoying fireworks. So the equivalent of antisocial neighbors. And they could just chill there for 2.5 days.
Check out this neat ship that's upside down. Rip out some consoles. Have a good time.
Eat Munez's body for sustenance.
Okay.
That's maybe a bit dark.
How sad was it that he died and then no one noticed? He passed while they were getting excited about a plan working. It's so sad.
Worf was kind of right all along.
Well, Worf thinks you should tell people straight to their face they're gonna die. And I wouldn't advocate for that.
Okay, so there was a bit of uncertainty here because they could have got out of the situation somehow and made it back to Deep Space Nine somehow. Okay, actually, considering there's another Dominion Jem'Hadar ship there, that seems kind of unlikely. So maybe Worf was right.
He was right that he was going to die, but that's messed up to tell someone, hey, you are for sure not going to see tomorrow.
Possibly, but that could be useful information. You could say, please, clear my browser history.
Oh, that sort of thing you have to set up with someone beforehand.
Yeah.
It was a nice touch that Worf joined O'Brien in sitting next to the casket.
I won't lie, for as silly as this episode was in parts, the last couple scenes, both the one with Dax and Cisco and the one with O'Brien and Worf, were both pretty touching.
They are moving moments, and despite the clumsiness of this episode, they earn those moments.
It's good. It makes you want to watch more.
That's something I thought about after watching this episode, how it probably wouldn't have worked in season 1 or 2 or even 3. How there would have been more wrong with it, and they wouldn't be as comfortable with these characters in the writing. Plus, Worf would be there, and that didn't make sense because he wasn't introduced yet.
Okay. Insightful.
Yes. It was also touching when Brian was humoring Munez's, I guess, death delusions when he thought he was a little boy watching fireworks, and he encouraged him. That was touching.
I wish O'Brien had a little chum like Munez more often. Just watching this
Wasn't
episode. Well, yeah, obviously. The banter between them in this episode was enough fun that I was just thinking, why didn't they put Munez in this a bit more? Make him have a bit of a relationship with O'Brien, rather than just be some guy that sort of turns out to be his best friend for an episode and then dies.
That is a shame that we get this tease of what friendly banter with O'Brien would be. We got some of that with O'Brien and Bashir, but they backed off of that, and we don't see that as much. So yes, I would like to see O'Brien with the buddy who doesn't die, and we could see them bounce off each other. He's so good at that friendly teasing.
He is. He's a little banter champion. He's got the gift of the gab.
How appropriate.
Moving onwards, do you have a quote from the show?
Always maintain emotional distance between yourself and those under your command, says Cisco, quoting some professor. And then he says, I try to follow it. How do you feel about that?
That seems like it comes effortlessly to him. Other than Dex, he doesn't really seem friends with anyone. I mean, I wouldn't say he's unfriendly. He just seems like a boss.
Yeah, he's good at being a boss and yelling at people, telling them what to do.
Yeah, he claims he kind of struggles with it. I don't think he struggles that much. Or maybe he just means he's invested in their lives and doesn't want them to die.
Yeah, I think that's what he was getting at. That he can't completely remove himself. But you should care that you wouldn't want to think of your crew as expendable.
But the price they paid for that ship was very low.
In the grand scheme, yes.
Like he said, that's the intelligence find of the decade. The Dominion are basically enemies, I guess. And now they can completely analyze one of their ships.
That's a big deal. And they don't make a big enough deal. Well, I guess they do. He says it's a huge find, more in the decade. There's not much fanfare, though.
Yeah. Okay, the viewers know it's important. They know it's important. He could have just bigged it up a little bit. But it was definitely worth 5 people dying.
Unless they're all lying to themselves and that ship is worthless.
No, it's good. So maybe Cisco isn't the psychopath you've profiled him as, if he's racked with guilt over only 5 deaths.
The first hole in my hypothesis.
Well, people have died under his command before and he hasn't cared that much. I don't know what was different about this incident. Maybe he just really wanted to take the ship and everyone home, so he just looked amazing.
He's sad that he didn't look as amazing as he could have. If he brought the ship back and a bunch of people, he would have several songs sung about him.
He would get loads of medals.
But now he only got a handful.
Not even enough to fill you up, should you want to eat them.
That's not recommended.
Not unless you eat metal.
I'm sure there's a Star Trek race that does. There has to be.
Oh, probably.
Here's something that's not connected to anything we've said.
Okay,
Why?
shoot.
Why did Bashir order supplies through Quark? Surely he has some sort of system to do that through. Why would he have to rely on outside channels?
Quark is a trader. There's hundreds and hundreds of civilizations out there. It's unlikely the Federation can just get stuff from everywhere. Or maybe they could, but it would be quicker just to ask Quark.
Maybe he saw it as a bonding moment, opportunity.
He just wants a friend so bad.
I'll order anything through you, Quark. Just be my friend.
Kira just drops like massive intel right in front of Quark, who's essentially a known criminal. I couldn't believe that. Their security is so bad.
And she did it right in front of the head of security.
Yeah, Odo was like, oh wow, that's really interesting.
Huh.
Anyone could be a shapeshifter, apart from Odo.
Oh.
He's not shapeshifter.
That scene's kind of funny because she's presented with this problem. Well, I'm out of here. I don't have time for this.
This is just a stupid problem. Sort it out yourselves.
So much for doing my job.
Why does Odo take them to Kira anyway? He's the head of security. He's judge, judy, and executioner.
He's a tattletale.
They killed a changeling in episode 1. They killed a changeling in episode 2. Shall we see what happens in episode 3?
I can guess.
Let's do it.
All right.